Chapter 1. A Dream of Industrial Independence. In the mid-20th century, a bold idea swept across Latin America, a dream of factories, smokestacks, and machines built not for foreign empires, but for Latin Americans themselves. Import Substitution Industrialization, or ISI, was a strategy driven by post-colonial frustration and a desire for economic autonomy. After independence, many Latin American leaders sought to break free from the perceived chains of dependency on developed nations. Why should Argentina export beef and import tractors? Why should Brazil sell coffee but buy steel? ISI promised domestic growth through protection, but in hindsight it also meant isolation from global innovation, efficiency and competition, key ingredients for long-term prosperity. This is the story of how that vision was born, how it reshaped a continent, and why, in the end, free trade offered a more sustainable path forward. Chapter 2. Why Import Substitution? The Post-Colonial Dilemma. To understand ISI, we must look at the scars of colonialism. For centuries, Latin America exported raw materials and imported finished goods, a pattern inherited from colonial times. Economists like Raúl Prebisch at ICLAC argued that this trade structure kept poor countries poor. He believed industrializing behind protective tariffs would allow Latin America to develop on its own terms. But Prebisch's theory, known as the Prebisch-Singer hypothesis, failed to consider the dynamic gains from global trade. While he emphasized deteriorating terms of trade, recent studies show many developing countries that embraced export-led strategies, like South Korea and Taiwan, outperformed those that pursued ISI. According to World Bank data, East Asian economies saw sustained annual growth rates of 7 to 9% from the 1960s through the 1990s, compared to 5% or less in Latin America, much of which came with higher inflation and debt burdens. Chapter 3. Building Industry Behind Tariff Walls. ISI came to life through protectionism. High tariffs, quotas and subsidies were introduced to shelter domestic infant industries. Foreign companies were allowed in only if they produced locally, but without foreign competition, many firms became complacent. Protected markets meant low-quality, overpriced goods and industries that could not survive on their own. Data from the Inter-American Development Bank shows that total factor productivity in Latin America stagnated or declined during the ISI years. By contrast, productivity surged in trade-friendly economies. Instead of building globally competitive firms, ISI often produced inefficient monopolies, fueled by cronyism and corruption. Chapter 4. The Boom, Growth, Jobs and National Pride. ISI's early years delivered growth. From 1950 to 1973, Latin America averaged 5.5% annual growth, impressive by historical standards. Urban populations grew, middle classes emerged, governments promoted domestic pride. But this growth came at a cost: inflation, inefficiency, and debt. Unlike the export-led models of East Asia, Latin American countries lacked competitive exports, meaning they couldn't sustain their growth through global trade. They relied heavily on borrowing and closed markets, leaving them vulnerable. Chapter 5. The cracks appear: inflation, debt, and inefficiency. By the 1970s, weaknesses were impossible to ignore. High tariffs raised the cost of capital goods. Subsidized industries failed to innovate. Many firms depended more on state support than consumer demand. Between 1975 and 1985, inflation soared across the region, reaching over 1,000% in Argentina by the end of the decade. According to IMF data, public debt as a share of GDP tripled in many countries during this time. Rather than solving dependency, ISI created a new kind: dependency on government support and foreign debt. Chapter 6. Neoliberal Turn, the Washington Consensus Strikes. Faced with crisis, Latin America turned outward. During the 1980s, neoliberal reforms emphasized free trade, privatization, and open markets. Yes, the transition was painful. Jobs were lost as inefficient firms shut down. But over time, trade liberalization brought lower prices, improved quality, and greater variety of goods. According to a 2005 World Bank study, countries like Chile, which embraced reforms early, experienced faster recovery and greater long-term stability. Chile's GDP per capita doubled between 1990 and 2010, a period marked by trade openness. Meanwhile, economies that resisted reforms, such as Venezuela, saw stagnation and decline. Chapter 7. Legacy Today. Lessons from the ISI era. ISI failed to deliver sustained prosperity, but left behind key lessons. It showed the dangers of over-reliance on government planning and protectionism. It also demonstrated the need for robust institutions, transparency, and competitive markets. Today, most economists agree that free trade, paired with targeted social policies, is more effective at reducing poverty and promoting innovation than inward-looking industrialization. The challenge now is to build resilient, open economies that can weather global shocks without retreating into isolation. Chapter 8. Outro. Can Latin America reclaim industrial sovereignty? The future of Latin America lies not in autarky, but in smart integration. Modern industrial policy need not mean high tariffs and closed markets. It can mean investing in education, infrastructure, and technology, while competing in the global arena. Trade doesn't mean surrender. It means engagement on your own terms. And history shows those who embrace openness, competition, and innovation don't just grow, they thrive.